The Gran Turismo World Series has officially kicked off, and we are starting at none other than the legendary Nurburgring Nordschleife. This is the official season where players can qualify for a live event, and we are diving straight into the manufacturer's series. If this is your first time watching, here is how it works. You choose one manufacturer and stick with it for the entire season. This means you'll be driving the same car in every round, no matter the track, even if it's sometimes not the ideal choice. For this season, I picked Peugeot. It's, I would say, a solid all-arounder, and after the recent BOP change, it became a very popular pick in daily races. I figured it could be a great choice, and honestly, I still think it is. That said, the Nordschleife wasn't exactly the best fit for this car. The corner combinations here really challenge its strengths. Still, looking ahead of the calendar, the next few races seem very promising. Going into Nordschleife, I actually expected variable weather, even some rain, but surprisingly, the first race started in dry conditions. The weather during the qualifying was pretty consistent. It was always sunny. That meant conditions were always the same for everyone, which made things fair but predictable. I had to be really careful with tire management during my outlap. The lap is pretty long, and if you push too hard too early, you can destroy your tires before they even matter. And then the qualifying started. I think qualifying was relatively decent. It wasn't amazing. I won't say it was a perfect lap. I made a couple of mistakes and I knew it wasn't my best lap, but I was pushing to the limit, giving it everything I had. I was really focused on the race ahead, and that's where I wanted to make something happen. The race itself, no rain, and honestly, that didn't help my car, which is usually better in the rain. It just wasn't great in dry conditions. So I spotted some possible rain on the radar and thought, well, why not take the gamble? I really have nothing to lose. I stayed out longer on slicks, hoping to make something work. Eventually, I boxed for intermediates, well, hoping once again that the rain will come, but in the end, it didn't quite pay off. I made just one more overtake and finished in P11, and the rain never came. Well, when I crossed the finish line, then it did. Not really the result I hoped for, but hey, I got 2 more slots to kind of prove myself on the Nordschleife. Oh well, qualifying and the second race. Well, they weren't exactly my best. I was pushing the car to its absolute limit. My lap was solid, and honestly, I don't think I made a single big mistake. But in the end, it just wasn't enough to compete with the faster cars. I ended up with a 7:54. Considering that my qualifying time in the time trial is 7:53, I'd say this is a very good result, because usually in the qualifying, you don't have any fuel or any tire wear. So I think it was a good lap. Like I said, during the qualifying, it felt like I was on the absolute edge of this car. And honestly, I still believe I was. And of course, then came the race. I don't even know how to describe the conditions. It had rained before the start, so the track was still a little bit damp, but not like soaked. So we could still use the slicks. And I think it was the right call. Intermediates would have just worn out too fast. I made an early overtake, and in these mixed conditions, my car actually felt really strong. Maybe even better than the rest of the field. That's why I was really hoping for rain, like a lot of rain, it's like soaking wet. But instead, the track dried up. I managed to grab another position and move into P9, and things were actually looking pretty decent. But once the track dried out completely, that advantage was gone. I started losing ground, and still I decided to take, of course, another risk, because really I have nothing to lose. I stayed out for one more lap on the slicks, hoping I could get something out of the second stint. But once again, it didn't really pay off. My tires were better, and I did have a few good battles, but once again, I finished in P11. I guess just P11 is my lucky, I'm gonna call it like a lucky number. But okay, I had one more slot to go, and that final lap of the evening really needs to be a good one. And I know what this car can do. So I decided to push it. I started my qualifying lap, and right away, the first couple of corners felt really good. Honestly, it was like I was back in my time trial session. The tire wear was starting to kick in, so it wasn't a perfect first sector, but it was still a very strong one. The grip was there, the car felt great, and I was just flowing through the corners, so nothing was really holding me back at that point. Then we hit the Nordschleife section, and again, the car just clicked. I didn't make a single big mistake. And unfortunately, Miro did, and he did crash out. That put me, I'm going to be honest, in a better position. It improved my chances of getting a solid grid spot. From that point on, I started pushing to, I'm going to say it once again, to the absolute limit. Track limits, braking zones, acceleration points. I was just squeezing everything out of the car. That was kind of the name of the game here. The car kept its rhythm, especially through the tighter sections, and by now I felt like I really understood it. Maybe a couple of hours behind the wheel started paying off. So I'm not saying the lap was perfect. There was always more time to find, but I was right on the edge. Maybe someone else could go faster, but I was really taking this car close to its limits, especially through the carousel. I threw it in with a wide line, brake late, car just got that flow, and then, of course, accelerated early. Well, usually they say it nailed it, and it was just feeling good. I was kind of completely locked in. I think I only said like maybe a couple of words during the whole lap, and I was just fully focused on it. After the final corner and that long straight, I crossed the finish line, and it was a 7:54, provisional P1. I eventually got bumped down to P2, but still, that meant that I'd start the race from the front row, which is very promising. And once again, I started pushing, like really hard. My goal was, I'm going to say it quite simple, stay as close as possible as I can to P1. That was, I guess, the only way. I still believe that the McLaren 650S was a slightly stronger car, maybe a little bit more competitive. I'm not sure. And I'm not talking about the driver, just like the overall package. The margins were very, very small. Even a tiny mistake or a tiny advantage, it could make all of the difference. As you can even see, Turismo, for example, he's a world-class player, a couple of world records, and he's probably one of the best players in the game. He was in the same car, and he qualified behind me. So that's how I knew my lap was really strong. Later, he mentioned that he had dirty tires at the start of his qualifying lap, so he didn't push to the limit in those early corners, which was fair enough. But I knew his race pace was just out of this world. Maybe I don't quite have the same race pace, but we are talking about maybe half a second over almost 8 minutes. That's almost nothing. So just one little mistake, and that is about it. So the Belgian driver behind me also in the McLaren, and he was, unfortunately for me, gaining. And honestly, there is only so much you can do when the car behind has a slightly better straight line speed, and unfortunately that was the case. I did what I could. I held my line. I tried to stay in the slipstream, but before the long straight, unfortunately, I lost the place. The gap just wasn't big enough. It was only half a second, and by the end of the straight, I was down to P3. Still, I kept going. I didn't back off. Even, I mean, I gotta say it, I was in a bit of dirty air at this point, but so was Turismo behind me. But that's all I could have done. Those half a second really make a lot of difference on this track, and I just kept on pushing just to see what can I do in this race. And eventually, after, well, half of the lap, I caught up to P2 once again, but I couldn't overtake. The straight wasn't long enough, and there definitely wasn't space. I definitely wasn't that much slower in the end, but I was consistently losing 2 to maybe even 3/10 in a couple of key corners. After the carousel, especially, I mean, I'm going to say that whole section, the rhythm just wasn't there, and Turismo just had better line through the corners. I wasn't taking the curbs the way I wanted to, and, well, he was closing in. And at that point, I knew it was just too close for the straight. And again, half a second, unfortunately, isn't enough, and I lost that position. We're in the same car, and when you don't have the slipstream, but your opponent does, half a second is just not enough to defend. And sure enough, he overtook me. There just wasn't enough time to make the move back. I kept on thinking, could have maybe done something differently. Maybe I should have pitted early, like For example, you will see here the guy in P2. Maybe the undercut was a better strategy, but like always, it's easy to be smart after the race. In that moment, I thought staying out might give me a tire advantage in the end of the race. Maybe I could have closed the gap and used the slipstream to get back close into the fight. But again, Turismo was slightly better in the final section, and what can I say? I lost the toe, and without the slipstream on the main straight, that was pretty much it. Well, I gotta say it to him. Well, he beat me on pure pace. Nothing to be really mad about. He earned it. I just wasn't quick enough through the final section. And, well, what can I even say? We pitted, and once again, I came out in P4. And now, the Belgian driver was leading the race, and even on worn tires, he was still pulling away from us. That pace, that consistency, it really made me wonder if the undercut was really the right call after all. But again, you don't get to make the right call after the race. You gotta make it in the race, and that's what really matters. So once again, I kept on pushing, but now I had Lopez right behind me in the Lamborghini, and that car was seriously strong, and I knew it could do some damage to me. Onto the straight, I was still ahead, but not by much, and he was still gaining, and he was actually getting dangerously close to me. And that's when the final lap started. And that final lap, what can I even say? It was the lap to be or not to be. I kept on pushing, but by then I knew unless someone ahead of me makes a mistake, I wasn't getting any closer. I made a couple of small mistakes myself. Again, nothing too major, but again, it just wasn't enough to close the gap. Still, I held my position. Behind me, a huge incident unfolded later. Watching it back, it turned out to be, well, kind of a simple driving mistake. Braking too late with slightly worn tires. It looked very dramatic, but it was just one of those moments. And then I crossed the finish line in P4. The gap to Turismo, who was in the exact same car, was just 2 seconds. That's 2 seconds after 5 laps on the Nordschleife. Just about 4/10 per lap. It wasn't my best result ever, but I really felt the car this time. We had that connection, really strange thing to say, but I gave it everything, and I came away with 379 points for that P4 in the second split. All in all, I can say that I'm pretty happy with the result. So guys, let me know what you think about this race down in the comments, and I would really love to hear your thoughts. And I really hope once again that you enjoyed it, and if you did, consider subscribing to the channel and even liking this video. So once again, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.